Welcome to SUSD Spotlight, your go-to source for all things happening within the district. Whether it's celebrating student and staff achievements, delving into trending education topics, or highlighting inspiring human interest stories, we've got you covered. Join us as we illuminate the incredible endeavors taking place in our schools and forge connections within our community. Get ready to be informed, inspired, and engaged as we embark on this journey together, spotlighting the extraordinary in SUSD. Well, welcome to another edition of SUSD Spotlight. Today, our focus is on literacy in Scottsdale Unified School District, and we're excited to welcome in studio Diane Murphy, SUSD's Elementary Language Arts Curriculum Specialist, alongside first grade teacher Sheena Byerley from Sequoya Elementary School and fourth grade teacher Rebecca Bentivegna from Echo Canyon School. So we're going to talk about something called CKLA. So I'm going to ask, Diane, if you could help our listeners understand what CKLA really is.
Of course. CKLA stands for Core Knowledge Language Arts, and it's our adopted program for grades K-5. It's through a company called Amplify, and it's our new one we just started implementing this school year, and pretty excited about it.
So when we think about reading, and sometimes people talk about the science of reading. There's a lot of, if you read anywhere, even just blurbs in general publications, you might see something about the science of reading, and people might not know what that is. How hard is it to get a kid to learn to read?
It is, well, part of what the science of reading is basically thousands and thousands of research over the last 20 or 30 years, and it's a compilation of all of the sciences of not only just cognitive sciences, but developmental and neurosciences. And just within the last couple of years have all of these things come together for us to really know what kids can and cannot do. There are some people that almost believe that the science of reading research is settled science. Now, that's kind of, take it with a grain of salt, but there's so much research on it showing how kids learn to read that we do now have that information of what kids need to have and what they should not have in order to be successful.
So from a first grade teacher perspective, you have kids coming in. Talk to me about the process of teaching a student to learn to read and how CKLA has required you to do some things differently than you did in all of your years of teaching, because I know this is not your first year.
No, it is not. So when the first graders come in, they come in at all different levels. I think CKLA does a really great job of incorporating all the pieces, the phonemic awareness, the phonics, the fluency, the comprehension. I think before CKLA, the phonemic awareness was a piece that kind of got skipped. The phonemic awareness is understanding that dog is made up of d, ah, g, and if you take out the d and you put in a f, you have fog, and it's kind of changing words. And so I think a lot of that got skipped. And so with your kids who maybe need a little bit of extra reading instruction, getting them to understand those connections and be able to kind of play with words has made it much more, have made them much more successful when they're looking at a word list of dog, fog, frog, and so on, that they're able to make that connection a little bit better.
And do students have fun doing this?
Oh, yes. Yeah, CKLA has these giant letter cards that once they get to the letter part, that's my students' favorite part, is when they get to do the giant letter cards and they stand in the front and one gets to go sit down and one comes up and they all kind of have to listen for their letter, and they do enjoy it a lot. We also use whiteboards a lot for this process. They like anything that's interactive, which CKLA does a great job of.
So there's a saying in education that up until third grade, you're learning to read, and after third grade, you're reading to learn. So we now have with us a fourth grade teacher. Can you talk about CKLA and your experiences at that level?
Fourth graders at my level, they're also coming in at different levels. So we are focusing on all the skills that you are from K through 3, but we're just enhancing on them. This year particularly, I was talking to Diane the other day about how the students are learning more about finding the answer themselves and then being able to go back to the text and support their response. I think that's a big thing that we're learning about this year that I'm really proud of my kids for.
I want to build on what Rebecca is saying, too, when it comes to like what you said, what happens after students kind of have the phonics under it, it kind of turns into what's called structural analysis. And what happens in grades 3 through 5 more is they spend more of the time looking at the morphology, the entomology, the vocabulary, the grammar behind all of that, looking at sophisticated, rich literature, and then figuring out how to use that in their own writing as well. So there's a lot more application with a lot more rigor, just building on what started in kindergarten, first grade.
And I have to imagine, because you think about secondary level and it's really more, you're going to an individual class period, whereas in elementary, you're sort of more of a generalist because you're covering so many core content areas that are all rooted in first CKLA, right? Because I think about the math word problems and I think about learning social studies or science and having that understanding of how to read and then reading to learn is so important. So how much of your day and everything that you do is really rooted in that CKLA?
Well, speaking of that, today, right now, we're in math, we are learning three-dimensional shapes. And so we were talking about the word cone and what a cone is. And I had a kid go, the cone has the magic E in it. And that comes from CKLA. And then in cylinder, they were saying, oh, cylinder, the C is making the S sound. And so they are making those connections deeper than I think they were before we had CKLA. So it is definitely, cross-curricular.
That's cool.
And when you're talking about knowledge, one of the great things about part of what the science of reading is all about is not just the phonics part of it, but the knowledge part of it. There's something called the simple view of reading, which is decoding times language comprehension, which is all that background knowledge, and knowledge equals what reading really is. So CKLA is one of the best, if not, I think we're probably a little prejudiced, the best program out there that really promotes knowledge when kids are reading. So they're not just reading about dogs and cats all the time, although we do, but we're also reading about in-depth studies in science and social studies and the arts.
So it could be historical events or take them back to a different place in a different time. And so they're learning something substantive that they may, again, revisit later on in their educational journey, but it's in context instead of just focusing on learning the words, the letters, and how the sounds fit together to make meaning.
Yep. And I bet, what have some of the things you've been studying in first grade this year?
We have studied ancient Mesopotamia. We have studied the Aztecs. We have right now we're studying the American Revolution. We've studied space. We've done some kind of more narrative things like fairy tales and fables. And Mesopotamia was probably their favorite one that we've done so far, though.
Okay, what was their biggest takeaway?
That Mesopotamia exists.
Okay. There's just a brand new concept to them. And that's interesting.
Yes, but they understood that the importance of water to the Mesopotamian people, that they had to settle along the rivers. We had a song, a Euphrates River song that they loved to sing. So my hope is when they revisit these in older grades, they at least have that background knowledge to say, oh, I kind of remember this. And I think that they do.
So in fourth grade, what kinds of things are you seeing in terms of student engagement and interest in the content?
Well, in student engagement, we had Eureka, which was the inventors unit, and they had a blast with that because they were learning how to, I can't remember what it was. It was, I'm having a little, where they stem from another invention, and so they're, the light turns into, another invention turns into another invention.
Right.
So they learned that, and so they were creating their own inventions. They learned that. We learned how to collaborate together as a group. It was the way that they all brought everything together with collaborating, writing, planning, outlining. Eureka was amazing. I mean, our kids had a blast with that. We also touched on their favorite unit, I think, so far to date would be geology. And with that, we were talking about, the volcanoes, and I turned it into a science-based project as well. And they made volcanoes, and they let them either erupt them, and they did a 3-paragraph essay on them as well. So,
well, it seems like with that kind of engaging learning opportunity, you get better attendance, right?
Yes, we do.
How many days of perfect attendance this year?
It's 56 today.
And growing, right?
And growing.
Because your kids are excited about
They
being
love
in
me.
school. So, well, and there is something to that. The teacher helps to create an engaging learning environment. The curriculum is important, but the curriculum by itself can be dull and boring unless someone brings it to life. And so I'm curious, what have you heard from your colleagues with respect to anytime you implement a new curriculum, there can be champions like the ones that we have here today and people who maybe aren't quite as excited about it. So what are the things that we've seen that have been frustrations or pain points in this first year of implementation, and what can we expect next year?
Well, it is. No matter whenever you have change, there's always going to be a little bit of hesitation and just getting used to something new. So one of the ways that we've been trying to help teachers with that is with a lot of professional development for teachers during the school day, after the school day, during the summer. And then this year I'm really excited is I've started something called ambassadors. And at every school I have a CKLA ambassador, and they come to basically a meeting training once a month for about an hour and a half, and then they go back and they are the champions for CKLA. And they're the ones that, kind of say, hey, this is how we do things, and teachers know they can go talk to them and ask them questions. And then they also are able to be the ones to take back to the district questions or concerns so that we can help solve them right away. And even if we can't solve them, we're aware of them so that we can start getting things in place. And these are two of the ambassadors.
Which is fantastic. One of the things that I would envision some parents might want to know is how much of this is done on the computer and how much is it in old-fashioned books?
It's all in old-fashioned books.
Okay.
But we do have computers. Every single thing on CKLA, for every book that we do have, we also have the electronic version of it. We have, for every workbook page, we have the electronic version of it. So we have, it's double duty. So it really comes down to the choice of the teacher, the student, and just kind of doing a variety of both.
And how do you address the struggling reader in the classroom? What are the kinds of supports you provide through CKLA?
So for my class, we do a lot of small group. I make a dedicated effort 3 times a week to do small group. My struggling readers tend to be in a smaller group than my proficient readers. And I take them way back to the basics. So a lot of phonemic awareness. We're pretty good with phonemic awareness at this point. So we're doing a lot of phonics. We're doing a lot of that letter manipulation. I do still like them to read. So I try to find a decodable reader at their level so they still feel successful with a little book. And so it's just a lot of more small group.
What role can parents play in all of this?
I would say parents, by asking the teacher at conference and outside of conference, where is their student at? What could they use help with? Where can they get these decodable texts? I think especially for the first graders are really, really important, and sort of having that support role at home. And the number one thing the parents can do if they can't do any of that is just read to their kids at night. The more they read to their kids at night from the youngest age, the studies have shown their literacy will be better as they get into school.
I was going to ask the parent question, and then additionally how we grow the love of learning, or the love of reading, because that's really what the love of learning is if you can get really good readers, and how it informs their writing and their innovating down the road.
Success really builds on success that way. Another way parents can get involved is CKLA does have through their All the Kids Clever account an Amplify account, and through that, and it's open all summer as well. Kids can go kids can go back in and listen to any of the stories, reread any of the stories they did today. In K1-2, there are these fabulous little songs that they can listen to and dances they can do to each one of the different sounds. So it'll be available to kids all year round, really.
So I don't know when this is going to air, but I have a curiosity, and this is why it's not a prepared question, but soon we'll find out our AASA test results. And in the first year of implementation of any new curriculum, sometimes you see a dip. And so I think it's important to kind of talk about what to expect in this first year and what we might expect to see in subsequent years related to that transition to a new curriculum.
Oh, you did have to bring that up, Dr. Menzel. Yes. Data does show nationwide when you start anything new, whether it's you're learning to go from a tricycle to a 2-wheel bike, or whether you're going from one language arts program to another, there will usually be an implementation dip the first year because you're just adjusting, you're learning, the kids are learning. There's a different scope and sequence, so there's always that. But usually what the data says is by year 2, you've evened out, and by year 3, you are flying. So we're through year 1. We're going to keep our fingers crossed still, though, because there's been so many fabulous success stories from not only teachers implementing this, but the teachers sharing their students many of the students have never been more excited about coming home and telling stories about what they're learning in the classroom.
That's a great measure of success, I think. I love hearing when my kid comes home and tells me a story. I think then it really sunk in and resonated with the learner, right?
Yeah.
So it really highlights the power and importance of teachers, the teaching profession, knowing that this is real hard work. It's not something you just roll out of bed and can do. It's not anyone can teach. It really takes a special skill set. And at the end of every podcast, I like to ask my guests to think about a teacher who made a difference in your life, maybe influenced your career choice, maybe was someone who sparked the love of learning for you. It can be anyone, elementary, middle, high school, could be a colleague, could be a principal, but we like to be able to celebrate people who have excelled in the profession and who made a difference in your life.
My math teacher, my high school math teacher, Miss Lutton, she helped me get to my first career, which was accounting, and which was, I really wanted to teach, but she got me to love numbers more, and I helped tutor when I was in high school. So she was my favorite.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Mm-hmm. One that sticks out to me is my third grade teacher, Mrs. Jacob Smith at Bel Air Elementary in Glendale, not Bel Air, California. And she just really encouraged probably everybody, but I remember me to do the things I loved. She let me perform a magic show to the kids. I wrote a class paper, all these things that were very much outside of the scope of the day-to-day, but it made me feel important and that I was valued.
I first graduated from college with a degree in broadcast journalism. And then when I decided to be a teacher, when I went back, my advisor, Dr. Schwartz, one day I remember sitting with her, she said, Diane, what do you want to do besides teach? I said, I just want to teach for the rest of my life. And she goes, no, Diane. She goes, I see you someday teaching teachers. And I said, no, I just want to, touch the lives of all the kids in my classroom. She goes, no, for every teacher you influence and you touch, you're touching all those kids' lives as well. And so a big shout out to Dr. Schwartz. All those 40 years ago, she recognized that something in me that I didn't at the time.
Those are really great stories. It's powerful to know that the students in Scottsdale Unified have the opportunity to learn in an environment where it's engaging. The foundation for reading, which prepares them for future success, is being laid right here by tremendous professionals. I want to thank you for what you do for our students, and thank you for being our guest on the show.
Thank you.
And we want to thank all of our listeners for joining us today, and we hope that you will pitch us ideas for future episodes on our website, susd.org/spotlight.